Autumn 1980. RAF Brawdy in West Wales, where men who've won their wings are made into fighter pilots.
Our job now is to take that embryo fighter pilot and teach him to fight. And sometimes they hadn't crossed their minds before they joined the Air Force to fly airplanes. And so really that's the nature of the course here. We're teaching them to fight, and we're also teaching them to survive. And most of the other part of flying is dealing with air combat, either in the air defence type environment, in the upper air, or also in the strike attack environment at low level, where they'll learn how to evade other air defence aeroplanes. Fast jet flying is a high pressure game, and they've got to be able to cope with a lot of complicated equipment in very tight environments, sort of busy environments, and sometimes in a lot of danger as well. So they've got to be able to think clearly. Basically, it means a man who can plan ahead, think ahead, keep going when the pressure's on. And that's where most of the failures occur, when their workload threshold is just not sufficiently high to cope with what's going on. So we've got to have high-quality guys flying our airplanes, basically. And that's what we need on the front line, because we're in the quality versus quantity game.
Now, it always causes a bit of a problem, which side do I put my man after takeoff? Because I want him to coast in on a certain side of me at Dina's, right? So let's just take one case, runway 33. Dina's head there, you want to coast in that way, and you want your man on that side.
Him to become predictable, he's gone up into a kind of oblique loop, allowing you to say, he's going up there, for you to pull back up into that position. The only thing he can do at that stage is to come down after you, but he's done it too late. So you've got the initiative. And now he's going predictable. He's countering you, but you've made him predictable downwards. So you can take advantage of that. Think about the collision point passing you as he goes from above you. You start overbanking, putting down again for the collision point. So you haven't won the combat, you have basically won it because he's lost it. It's not purely by flying, he's lost it by not manoeuvring as aggressively possibly to the collision point.
The reason why it's a 4G turn is because we don't want to make it any tighter than that. But there's no real practical reason why it shouldn't be 6. But we fly a 4G turn there. And as he comes around here, he's got a chance to look back here for the bad bogey who's going to smoke you. Okay?
The whole of the last 2 years are almost like a dream, and it's very difficult to imagine that they've actually happened if you think back, because the amount of work I've done, although the public may think 2 trips of 1 hour each a day is the height of luxury and, you know, love to do it. It's bloody hard work, and there's no two ways about it. And it's a shame. I hope the film gets over the fact that to them that we don't just laze about in the crew room and then just go off and fly for an hour and then come back and sit down and wait around for a bit and then fly for another hour. It's not like that at all. And in sheer mental pressure, it's equivalent to a day's work, I would say. you can't afford to think about staying level at 250 feet, really. That's got to almost be second nature because your brain has too much to do here. Certainly there are times when you realise that you could not accept another single piece of information. If, for example, somebody in the midst of calculations you have to do, say, at low level, asked you what 2 + 2 was, you would not be able to tell them the answer because you couldn't commit any part of your brain to solving that.
Now, first of all, we try and demonstrate to them how very easy it is for the simulated enemy aircraft to get them into an embarrassing situation. So if you can imagine these two models of the aircraft involved, we'll always treat the red one as our enemy. And so we get into the situation where the blue aircraft is attacking the red one, and the red one just turns towards the blue one, and all we do is initially try and track the red aircraft with our gun sight. And eventually, the whole thing tightens up, we pull more and more G, and eventually we can't pull any more G, and we get flown through the enemy's 6 o'clock. And all the enemy has to do then is reverse, and he's getting us into an embarrassing situation. So the first thing they have to do is to be able to recognise this fly-through situation developing. Once they can recognise that, we can give them a remedy to stop them flying through. And all we get them to do is what we call a high-speed yo-yo. So if we get to this situation again, where everything's tightening up, if it gets too much, then we just get them to raise the nose, use the vertical to stop their motion through the plane of the red aircraft. And by doing so, they can linger up here, overbank, and come back down into a firing position. We're aiming to get into between 250 and 500 yards behind the enemy aircraft, simulated enemy aircraft. And that's our sort of guns firing position. So that's their first basic combat maneuver, the high-speed yo-yo. And really the secret we're trying to get across them is first of all to be able to handle the aircraft to its limits, and then to employ it in a tactical way. And the only way really to win combat is to try and be unpredictable. If the enemy knows just what you're going to do, then it's very easy for him to do the correct counter, to negate your advantage. If you can do something unexpected, then, first of all, it's very likely that this red aircraft may lose contact with the blue one. And of course, you can't fight combat if you can't see your enemy. And so there's an immediate advantage. So by being unpredictable, you may lose sight, or the enemy may lose sight of you, and then you can do your own thing and eventually creep up on him and shoot him down. And that's the most difficult concept to get across. In the last war, you would tend to have two aircraft perhaps fighting on the same side. The leader and his mate would always be hanging on as a wingman. In other words, he would just be sticking in position, searching for enemy aircraft, and just staying with his leader. Well, now we've broken away from that concept because, of course, our frontline aircraft have got missiles, and so we can make the fight much wider. And if we can use that second aircraft, instead of just staying in with his leader, he's redundant, really. We're not using his potential. So if we can actually use him independently, then we have much more potential for killing the enemy. So it is more difficult than it used to be, and we expect more from them.
Sounds an evil game to me.
Oh, it's a sport of kings, definitely.
There are times when I wonder why I'm bothered, why I'm doing it, and why the hell should I work this hard for, well, not a limited amount of money, but certainly I think some people do jobs that pay the same and they do less work, or at least they're under less pressure. And you wonder whether you're doing the right thing. But you have a couple of good trips, especially at low level, I think, and it makes up for it all. And you go home really happy.
Home now for John McRae is a village cottage that he rents with 3 other pilots. His new status, a flying officer training for combat, entitles him to live away from base, and it's a chance he's grabbed at. After 2 years' hard slog, his attitude to the RAF is coolly professional and a long way from being devout.
The Air Force can take over your life, and I think they sometimes try to, which is all right in many ways. Obviously, you've got to be motivated, but I think anybody that does any job and gets involved in it 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, tends to cease to become an interesting person because they tend to talk just about the job. And I was finding that it was very hard to have a conversation with anybody about anything other than aircraft, and that worried me. So as a result, now I try and avoid talking about aircraft other than at work. Because, I mean, why should you? There's other things to do apart from the RAF. I like being in the RAF. It's not a bad job at all. But it doesn't mean that it's my whole life. Because, you know, I've got other things to do. I play my guitar, or, you know, I like my car, you know, I like driving. And I don't see that I should have to be that involved. So, it's just nice to get away, that's all. Whoop! I find the mess very oppressive. The main thing I don't like is the fact that you have to dress up in, you know, a lounge suit, which it's not something I particularly object to as such, but it's just nice to arrive home from work and be able to lounge about and watch television. If somebody says, this is John McRae and he flies fast jets for the RAF, they seem to be interested, and it certainly provides a topic of conversation. It's one that I try and get off as soon as possible, but at least it allows you an opening gambit, which is useful. I mean, if I said I'm John McRae and I'm a, what shall we say, a vehicle mechanic, no insult to vehicle mechanics, but you probably meet more vehicle mechanics than you do RAF fighter pilots.
I hate it when it gets fast like this.
Oh, stop. Good afternoon. Blue section. We've had some interesting reports in recently from intelligence. If you'd like to read through that, look up when you're ready. The aim: to smash 2 vital well-shelled targets and kill people, simulated. To fly good formation, as always, and to return to base safely. The aircraft fit: we've got 2,000 pounders per aircraft, 2 Sneb pods, and 130 rounds of gun ammunition. The timing will be as briefed by ops. Quite a nice target, this, I think, and some nice pictures. Unfortunately, most of these are shown from the wrong angle, but anyway, you can see that it has probably at some time been all masonry. All the buttresses, no, I'm not sure what those are called, pontoons, that's right. All the pontoons are brick. The 2 outer ones still carry the masonry spans, masonry arches. The 2 centre ones carry wooden trestles. They look to me like sleepers or something like that, supporting a fairly flimsy centre section. That's the bit we're going for, obviously, because that's the bit I think it will only require a touch on one of those to knock the whole lot down. Okay, pull up just before the valley and tipping in left and looking for the bridge. Now, I'll show you what I expect to see here. We'll be pulling up, looking left into our 10 o'clock, and the first thing we'll see is the wood. The river there runs along at the bottom of the wood, so using the square wood and the river in conjunction, we can see that on the bottom far side of the square wood the bridge. Basically, as we come off, we're running just to the north of the valley that runs down to Brecon. If I can see that we're in high ground, and I can see the 120 mast possibly, I will turn south, looking for Brecon, and when I know that I'm definitely established in the valley, it'll be back onto track and back down to the mast.
Yeah, okay. Good, right. Let's go fly it.
Let's go.
It doesn't look bad in either direction, actually.
I think the north-east looks better.
It looks dark out to the southwest if we go northeast.
Early morning, a mission under the command of John McCrae. SAP-5 is about to be launched. SAP stands for Simulated Attack Profile. They're going to run through hostile airspace, seek out and destroy a bridge, and then run for home, eluding enemy aircraft, if they can.
Okay, thanks.
They reckon low level is dangerous, and obviously it is, because you get bird strikes and things like that. And obviously if something goes wrong with the engine at that height, you haven't got a lot of reserve height to play with. Even if you pull up from 420 knots, you'll only get 4,000 feet. So the dangers are there, but I think they certainly are outweighed by the sheer sense of satisfaction you get from flying low level. When I'm in the air, I never ever think of that. If a bird goes past very, very close, you don't think, oh, cool, that could have hit me, I hope there's no more coming. I almost immediately forget about it. You see it go past and you think, oh, thank God it missed me, but you don't worry about it. You can't afford to anyway. You've got too much else to think about. If you're working at all, you can't afford to worry, because there's just too much to do. And I couldn't imagine anybody being worried like that. If you're going to fly at all, you've got to accept that there are risks. You don't fly as an airliner does. He flies at a basic straight or level flight path. You have to follow the ground, so your altimeter is useless. I mean, you might be up in the hills in Wales and your altimeter might be reading 3,000 odd feet. So basically you have to completely ignore that and just judge it. So just seeing the ground from that height, and although the impression of speed is not really there, although it can be if you're... The time the impression of speed comes in is when the weather suddenly clamps down and you're going flat out towards something that you don't quite recognise, and there's cloud all around you, and you're in a sort of little pool of clear sky, but you know that a certain distance in each direction there's cloud. That's when it suddenly becomes very, very quick, and you wish you could just stop like a helicopter and look around for a while. But you can have varying amounts of cloud over the target, which creates shadows, or you can be right into sun. You obviously try not to plan for that, but for a variety of reasons. I mean, snow on the ground can make the whole thing look completely different, and the photographs we use could be 5-6 years old, so a wood that's shown might not be there at all, or a small wood could have grown up in that time, a small plantation anyway. I don't know, I just find it fascinating to just look at the ground and see the ground from that, because it's a view of the ground that you very rarely get. I mean, obviously if you don't fly, you never see that. It's just like a map unfolding before you. A certain distance before the target, you pull up and arrange it so that the target is either in your 10 o'clock position or your 2 o'clock position, so that it's nice to be able to see it just out the side of the canopy. So you pull up, look down and dive at it, but picking it up is not easy at all. It's tricky sometimes. In fact, it can be pretty difficult.
Okay.
We can have McCrae's details.
Right. Flying Officer McCrae. His preferences at Valley were Buccaneer, Jaguar or Tornado. It's a little bit early for Tornado, as I said before, so Buccaneer or Jaguar are his realistic choices. And he was considered suitable by Valley to go air defence single-seater low level.
He had one weakness at Valley, and that was a tendency to want to give up when the going gets tough.
The recommendations from us, Buccaneer, that's his own preference, and he is a sound average guy, and I think he'll cope well with it. He gets on well with his fellows. I think he had no troubles with crew cooperation in that respect. I put a question mark against Jaguar and single seat, only because he's not the kind of character that's going to set the world on fire ever, I don't think, and I'm not quite sure about his ability perhaps to assimilate all the information required at the early stages of the Jaguar course. I wouldn't want to see him come a cropper over that unnecessarily.
Yeah.
What you got? What is it? A real aircraft! Go on, go on!
Labruck, West Germany, home of 15 Squadron, where John McCrae's posted after graduating to combat aircraft. He's had 4 months training on Buccaneers.
The operations setup, which takes the daily flying, and the weather states. And to get in here, you have to know the code of the door, which is 541. And we do all our planning in there.
He'll be here on probation for 6 months. This is the final test and the most exacting. He's got to demonstrate all the skills of the fast jet pilot and at the same time pass a form of character examination. If he's not of the right stuff, if he doesn't fit, the squadron will reject him. In 6 months' time, if the squadron takes him on, John McCrae will be declared combat ready. He'll be on instant alert in one of these hardened aircraft shelters. He'll have committed to memory a single Russian word, the name of his personal target, should the balloon go up.
I think people who talk about nuclear disarmament are dreaming, unless you can get everybody to do it. And obviously, if you could get everybody to do it, it'd be nice. But you never will. You'll never persuade the Russians to stop using them. And if we disarm and they don't, then we're stupid. I don't think I could ever take part in a war in which we were the aggressor or we were on the offensive. I wouldn't like to think that I was in a situation where we'd started a war, and I don't think we ever will. But if the crunch ever comes to it, I'll do it. And in fact, surprisingly enough, it's a bit like, I don't know how to say this, but it's a bit like playing a Space Invaders game. You sit there in the cockpit, nice and warm, gun sights in front of you, and you wouldn't see all the people squirming about on the ground with napalm all over them or whatever. You'd just drop the bomb and you'd be gone. So, although that's a nasty, cold way of looking at it, that's what it would be like. And if they were doing that to your people, you know, you're going to do it. Everybody's got to.
Of the 6 young men who set out 3.5 years ago, John McCrae alone has made it to fighter pilot. Of the others, Rod Smart failed at officer training, but was given another chance and passed at the 2nd attempt. Then to flying training, where he failed after 35 hours in the air. But after a year's course for a navigator, he won his brevet. He's currently flying in Canberra's. Trevor Lewis was chopped because he was unable to land the aircraft. He then left the Air Force and a year later married Barbara. He's now studying for an electronics degree at Reading University. Alistair Stewart, having withdrawn from flying training, spent a year learning to be a navigator. He was posted to fly Buccaneers, but in September 1981, once more withdrew. He now wants to leave the Air Force. Martin Oxborough, not recommended to fly fast jets, he spent 6 months training for transport aircraft and is now flying Hercules around the world from RAF Brawdy. Robbie Lowe gained his wings but was not suitable for fighters and trained on Canberras instead. He married Sally, the girl he met in officer training, who'd waited for him to get his wings. But after a second illness, a suspected stomach ulcer, which tests eventually proved negative, he failed one of the flying exams and was chopped. This means he has lost his wings. He is about to start training as a navigator.
What would you say to someone that you might meet tomorrow going to Biggin Hill, starting where you started?
You mean apart from don't? I'd say don't if you think it's a last resort, or if you think that it sounds a glamorous job and that is the only reason, then don't, because you won't hack it.
Ellis, Mr. Hargreaves, Mr. Moore, and Mr. McLean.
There are times when I've realised that I've been very close to being chopped, and I don't know whether it's right, but I seem to work better when I'm on review, for example, than when I'm not, because I suddenly think, well, bloody hell, they're not going to chop me, you know. There are times, like at Linton, when I went to a chop ride, when it would have been very easy to say, well, one last trip and that's it, end of story. But I haven't, you know, because I don't like people to beat me like that.
What does your mum think about it all?
Oh, Mum. She's very proud, I think. I don't know. I don't think she worries about me. I thought she might. I thought she might be worried about me crashing. But I don't think she worries about that aspect of it. She worries about me being unhappy and about me being shouted at and, you know, and about me whinging and getting in trouble. But she's very proud of me, you know.